Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to our daily The Hindu News Analysis. So today, I have chosen 10 important articles from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. There are 4 articles which requires a detailed analysis, especially from a mains point of view. And we have 6 more articles which are more prelims oriented. So let's cover all these articles in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are benefiting from this initiative, all you have to do is press the like button, share these videos with other aspirants, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also, as soon as the session ends, we have a quiz on these topics on our Telegram channel. So do head to the Telegram channel as well after the session so you can practice these questions again. So let's begin with the first topic from page number 1. The topic deals with international relations, deals with India's ties with Egypt, which is clearly undergoing a major transformation since the last 1 year. As you know, Prime Minister Modi has paid a historic visit to Egypt following his visit to the United States. So the article is focusing on the recent developments, but let's carry out a thorough analysis of India-Egypt relations as the topic can be very important for your mains exam. There are several points that are relevant for your prelims as well. So let me cover this topic in complete detail. So what's the context here? The context, why this topic is in news. It's in news because of Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to Egypt. This is the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Egypt in the last 26 years. So you can understand how important or how significant this development must be. During this visit, several key agreements have been signed. But the most important agreement is that they have decided to elevate the relationship to the strategic partnership level. This will further broaden the relationship into many different sectors and areas. It will build more resilience into the relationship and allows both countries to focus on several strategic areas of cooperation such as defense, security, and as well as climate change, renewable energy, etc. So that is why the development is very important, and let's start from the very beginning. First, let's understand the historical ties that bind India and Egypt. As you know, both Indian civilization and the Egyptian civilization happen to be one of the oldest civilizations in the world. Even though we don't have much of documented evidences showing our ancient historical links, there are few traces in our history which points towards ancient linkages between the Indian civilization and the Egyptian civilization. For example, there are few documented records showing how South India especially had an ancient connect with the then Egyptian civilization. Particularly from the coast of Malabar, South Indian women were transported to Egypt to work as maids in the pharaonic palaces, and there are documented evidence to show that. Cleopatra was served by Indian maids who would put her to sleep, give her massages, etc. So this clearly shows a direct cultural and people-to-people relationship dating back to the ancient times. There are few documented evidences showing trade as well between ancient India and ancient Egypt. And there has also been a lot of architectural influence, especially since the medieval times. If you look at the various monuments built since the Delhi Sultanate, under the slave dynasty, the Khilji dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, going all the way till the Mughal dynasty. The architecture that was built in India, they have traces of Egyptian ancient architecture. Many historians have been able to point to the similarities that exist between some of the tombs that are built in India by the Mughal rulers and the Delhi Sultanate, and they compare that with the pyramids and the interior structure of the pyramids and the grave structures in Egypt and point out the similarities between them. For example, Akbar's tomb at Sikandra, which you can see here in the image, it has many traces of Egyptian ancient architecture. So this forms a strong historical civilizational link between the two sites. And in the modern times, there have been many close links between India and Egypt. During the colonial period, during the freedom struggle, Mahatma Gandhi and Saad Zolgol of Egypt, they shared common vision, common goals towards leading their countries towards independence from colonial rule. Mahatma Gandhi and Saad, who's seen as a leading figure of Egyptian freedom struggle as well, right? They had similar values and similar vision to throw out the colonial occupiers. Post-independence, India-Egypt cemented a very strong relationship based on this shared ideals and vision. The initial leaders, led by then Prime Minister Nehru and the legendary Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser, they were very close friends of each other. Both had similar ideas, visions and ideologies, and both were personally very close to each other, and this helped in driving a very friendly relationship between India and Egypt. In 1955, please make a note of this, in 1955, India and Egypt signed a treaty of friendship, which became the foundation of this friendly relationship. Both countries recognized each other, set up diplomatic ties as soon as they gained independence. And thanks to the personal friendship between Nehru and Gamal Abdel Nasser, a treaty of friendship was signed in 1955. From here onwards, both the countries have built a very strong relationship, and especially in today's times, Egypt becomes a key partner for India given its strategic location. I want you guys to take a look at the map and understand the strategic location that Egypt occupies in the West Asia, North Africa region. This region is referred to as the Wana region or the MENA region. Wana stands for West Asia, North Africa. MENA stands for Middle East, North Africa. Because usually Western countries like US, they refer to the region as Middle East, whereas we refer to it as West Asia. So in this region, Egypt is a major Arab state, or African state as well. It's part of the African continent and serves as a link, a connection between Africa and West Asia. If you look at the map, you will realize that Africa is a connection, a direct connection that links with the Middle East region, the West Asia region, and Egypt is the link, the common connect here, right? If you look at this in North Africa, this is where Egypt is present. It faces the Mediterranean Sea to the north, thus giving access to Europe and the Atlantic over here. And the Sinai Peninsula that you see in this map, this triangular piece of land, the Sinai Desert or the Sinai Peninsula, this is the common link that connects Africa with West Asia, right? Egypt, along with being a neighbor of African countries like Libya, Sudan, etc., it's a neighbor of West Asian countries as well, such as Israel. And you can see the Gulf of Aqaba over here, where Egypt shares maritime boundaries with Jordan and Saudi Arabia as well. So this key location of Egypt is what makes Egypt a strategic partner for countries like India. It is a connection not just between Africa and Asia, but it also connects the strategic Red Sea over here with the Mediterranean. Thanks to the artificial canal, the Suez Canal, the strategic Suez Canal, which you can see in this map, a direct link has been formed between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, which essentially creates a shorter route connecting the Indian Ocean with the Atlantic. Without the Suez Canal, ships between Indian Ocean and Europe, they had to circumnavigate across Africa, across Cape of Good Hope, and then reach the Indian Ocean, which was a very long circuitous route. But thanks to the construction of the Suez Canal, right, a direct opening was created over here, linking the narrow Red Sea that you see in the map, which further connects with Bab al-Mandeb Strait over here, a narrow strategic choke point that further connects with the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. So via Suez Canal, a shorter and a direct route was created between European countries and the Indian Ocean countries. So from a trade point of view, this is extremely critical. A lot of India's exports and imports, they pass through the strategic Suez Canal. Europe, for example, is a huge market for India, a very big export market for India. We are also exporting defense equipment to several countries. There are 42 countries where India is exporting defense products, and at least 1/4 of them are located in the Vana region. And all of them, they use the Suez Canal for their maritime trade. So given these connections and also the presence of the Indian diaspora in this region, it becomes very crucial to maintain close defense and strategic ties with Egypt. Because any blockage of the Suez Canal, right, could have very serious implications for the global economy and for Indian interests. The Suez Canal and the strategic ports of Egypt, like Port Said, which you can see here, they have been frequently used by India. For example, during the latest crisis in Sudan, when Indians had to be evacuated, an Indian naval ship had been docked at Port Said as part of the close defense relations with Egypt. So quickly the naval ship could be diverted from Port Said via Suez Canal to Port Sudan in the Red Sea, from where Indians were evacuated into Jeddah on the other side of the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. So India does have a significant naval presence as well. We have been projecting our military influence along with our economic and cultural influence. So Egypt plays a key role in all of this. It's a neighbor of Israel as well. It borders the Gaza Strip. It has previously fought wars with Israel over the Palestine conflict. Right? So given the significance of all these geographical and geopolitical issues, Egypt becomes very, very important for India. Now, if you look at our relations, how it developed post-independence, after the Treaty of Friendship was signed, India-Egypt, they championed the non-aligned movement and founded a third ideology when the world was divided during the Cold War between two major ideologies. The Western countries were pushing democracy and capitalism, whereas the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, was pushing communism and socialism. So a very strong geopolitical divide had emerged between US and Soviet Union, and a Cold War rivalry had begun between them, where the US-led Western Bloc would target the Soviet power bloc on the other side and vice versa. So during this entire period of the Cold War that lasted from late 1940s to 1991, when the world was divided between these two ideologies, India and Egypt, they championed a third ideology, which was a neutral ideology. When every country was siding either with the Western Bloc or the Soviet Bloc, India and Egypt, they carved a third neutral path and they gave a call for remaining non-aligned without choosing either of the sides. To prevent an arms race, to prevent further tensions and a potential global war, India-Egypt laid the foundation for the non-aligned movement, which became an ideological movement championed by India and Egypt. In fact, it was India, Egypt, along with other like-minded countries such as Indonesia, then Ghana, and Yugoslavia, the former erstwhile country of Yugoslavia. It was these countries which laid the foundation of the non-aligned movement. The leaders of these countries, led by Prime Minister Nehru, they championed the non-aligned cause, and for many years this is what kept India and Egypt closer. Later, when Egypt faced major crisis situations, be it the Suez crisis, where Egypt was potentially losing control of the Suez Canal thanks to pressure from European countries and as well as Israel, India completely supported Egypt, and even during the 6-day war involving many Arab countries against Israel over the Palestinian conflict, India supported Egypt, and we helped Egypt and other countries here in rebuilding their economies, which had been destroyed after the 6-day war. Because on the Israel-Palestine question, India had maintained an ideological stand. We were supporting the two-state solution. We supported the rights of Palestinians to have their own country, and were critical of the way in which Israel had unilaterally declared independence and violated the rights of the Palestinians. Also, because of geopolitical compulsions, since India depended on the Arab states for oil supplies, India started focusing more on supporting the Palestinian cause, and we gave support to Egypt and other Arab countries during the 6-day war and rebuilt their economies as well through better trade and better investments, and this is what cemented a strong relationship between the two sides. We even gave the MFN status, the most favored nation status, in 1978 to further improve the bilateral trade between the two countries. So this has almost carried forward in present times as well. Of course, there has been a general sense of neglect in the relationship in the last 30 to 40 years because non-alignment lost its relevance. As non-alignment lost relevance, India-Egypt had drifted apart. But in the last 20 years at least, attempts have been made to bring the two countries closer. Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh made a very active attempt to rebuild the ties with Egypt, and then Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak paid a very important visit to India in 2008. This renewed hope of a strategic partnership being built between the two countries. But unfortunately, it was disrupted because of the Arab Spring revolutionary movement, which is a pro-democracy revolutionary movement that spread across the Wana region in 2011. In this pro-democracy movement, Egyptian citizens, they rose up in protest against Hosni Mubarak, who was seen as a dictator, as an authoritarian ruler, and Hosni Mubarak was thrown out of power, led by Egyptian protesters. So following this dramatic revolution which happened, the relations were interrupted for a short while. But in the last 9 years, especially after 2014, Prime Minister Modi and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, they have prioritized the relationship, and today they have managed to bring the relationship to a new strategic level. It all began by inviting Egypt's president as the chief guest for our Republic Day celebrations last year. India every year invites a chief guest for the Republic Day parade, and this is a symbolic gesture that we make in our foreign policy. The leaders whom we invite as chief guests, we are sending a symbolic message to those leaders and to those countries that we will prioritize our ties with that country for the coming 1 year. And that's exactly what India has done. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was invited as the chief guest for the Republic Day parade, and since then, since January 2022, we have scaled up the relationship. Since 2023, we have scaled up this relationship, and we have also invited Egypt as a guest country for the upcoming G20 summit. India, which is hosting the G20 summit, gets to invite a few guest countries, and Egypt is one of the guest countries being invited to take part in the upcoming G20 summit. So India has really transformed the relationship with Egypt, and now this has been further cemented by the historic visit of the Prime Minister to the country. Prime Minister Modi has become the first Indian leader to visit in the last 26 years, and he has even been awarded with the highest honor of Egypt. The Order of the Nile has been conferred on the Indian Prime Minister. This is Egypt's way of thanking India and sending out a friendly gesture towards India. Several top leaders like Nelson Mandela and the others, they have been honored with Egypt's highest honor, the Order of the Nile, and now this has been bestowed on the Indian Prime Minister as well. Right? So these symbolic gestures, they play a very big role in building close political relations and further bringing the two countries together. So during the visit, 4 important agreements have been signed between India and Egypt, but the most important agreement is the Strategic Partnership Agreement. This elevates the relationship to the strategic partnership level, which helps in broad basing the relationship. It's only with very close partners India establishes a strategic partnership. For example, we have a strategic partnership with US, with Russia, with Australia, right? With Japan. It's very few select countries with whom we have a strategic partnership. And in geopolitics, when a strategic partnership is established, it essentially means that the relationship is not just dependent on few areas of cooperation. There will be many sectors which will be opened up so that issues in one sector will not be allowed to affect the relationship in the other sector. Let's say between India and US, we might have trade related issues. We might be filing cases against each other at WTO as far as the trade relationship is concerned. But will not allow that to affect our defense relationship. Also, when a strategic partnership is established, there is more focus on strategic areas of cooperation. Maybe nuclear power, clean energy, climate change, defense and security, including defense exports, military exercises, etc. So such a broad-based relationship is often referred to as a strategic relationship. This is cemented by signing a strategic partnership agreement, and India and Egypt have signed such an agreement which elevates the ties to the strategic partnership level. Along with that, 3 MOUs have been signed, 3 other agreements have been signed related to agriculture, archaeology and antiquities, and competition law. Because Egypt is facing challenges in food security. Recently, when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, it disrupted global food supplies, especially the supply of wheat. And I don't know if you know this, Egypt is one of the world's largest importers of wheat. Wheat is a staple in Egyptian diet, very critical for making bread. And Egypt is one of the largest importers as it does not produce wheat on its own. Russia and Ukraine were the biggest suppliers to Egypt. So as the war broke out, food supplies to Egypt was disrupted and India stepped in to export wheat to Egypt to help Egypt sustain its economy and provide food security in the country. So these are issues that Egypt would like to solve in the long run, and India, being one of the biggest agrarian economies in the world, is in the right position to help out Egypt. So there have been discussions related to sustaining the wheat exports from India to Egypt and also in helping out each other in the field of agriculture. Because Egypt also faces challenges in drought resistant farming, in irrigation, water conservation, right? Because Egypt is also largely a desert area, and because of the aridity and semi-arid regions, it faces a lot of challenges in agriculture, which is quite similar to the challenges faced by India. So there is an agreement on agriculture to promote cooperation between the two countries, an agreement on archaeology and antiquities. Since both are ancient civilizations, there are important archaeological sites, monuments. So conservation of these archaeological sites and monuments is a key focus area. Plus, several antiquities have been lost by both the sides. They have been stolen, sold in the black markets, which we discussed yesterday as well. So India and Egypt are looking to cooperate in this area, and Archaeological Survey of India will collaborate with Egyptian archaeological authorities. And competition law is another key focus area, where India and Egypt will harmonize their competition laws to make it easier for companies on both the sides to operate in their respective countries. Along with that, defense exports has become a priority. India is looking at Egypt as a major defense market because Egypt has shown interest to procure the LCA Tejas, which is indigenously produced by India. In fact, Egypt and even Argentina, these two countries are actively looking for modern fighter jets, and India is pitching the LCA Tejas for both the countries. Along with LCA Tejas, there are a few other defense equipment that Egypt is already interested in. This includes many radars built by Indian institutions like DRDO and Bharat Electronics Limited, even several missile components, the Akash air defense missile system, and there are reports of discussions on BrahMos as well, the potential export of such missiles from India to Egypt. So Egypt might become a big defense market for Indian defense exports, and that is one more reason why we are prioritizing our strategic relations. The defense cooperation is being prioritized. Military to military relations have become the focus in the last few months. And we even conducted a military exercise called Exercise Cyclone 1 in January 2023. This was the first ever military exercise between the armies of both the sides. It involved the special forces from Indian Army and the Egyptian Army. So the para commandos of the Indian Army along with Egyptian special forces conducted this first ever military exercise called Exercise Cyclone 1. The Indian Navy also is very proactive in the region, and it has paid several port visits, regular port visits, and passed through Suez Canal. It has docked the ships at Port Said. So Indian Navy does extend its maritime power into this region, and Egypt helps India to maintain its military influence in the region. The two countries have also agreed to collaborate in the field of clean energy, climate change, and more importantly, Egypt is a key member of important groupings such as the African Union and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. India has proposed membership for African Union to the G20. So India and Egypt can collaborate here. Egypt and India, they support each other at the United Nations, especially with regard to UN reforms. As India is seeking a permanent seat at UNSC, Egypt has been backing India's position. And in return, India is returning the favor by promoting a membership for African Union at the G20, and Egypt will stand to benefit from this. But one point of contention is the OIC, where Pakistan has often brought up the Kashmir issue to target India. This is where Egypt has often supported Pakistan's position. Even recently, when India hosted a G20 meeting in Srinagar, few countries did not participate in the meeting, and Egypt was one of them. Egypt did not participate in the Srinagar meeting with regard to a G20 meet, and it shows Egypt's continued support to Pakistan on the Kashmir issue. Even at OIC, when Pakistan has brought up the issue, when voting takes place, Egypt has often backed Pakistan. So this is one contentious issue, but experts say that we should not allow this issue to derail the much more important relationship. Of course, we need to pull Egypt away from Pakistan's influence. That would be a long-term strategic goal. But for the time being, we shouldn't allow Egypt's stand on the Kashmir issue to derail the broader relationship. That is why the Modi government is pursuing the further broadening of this important relationship. It gives us critical influence in the Suez Canal region, right, in the Red Sea and in the Wana region, which is extremely important for Indian interests. So that is what you can understand from the latest visit of the Indian Prime Minister to Egypt. The last point which I would like to highlight before I close the discussion is the cultural aspect of the relationship. Prime Minister Modi also visited the Heliopolis Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery in Cairo, where there is a dedicated memorial for Indian soldiers. Almost 4,300 Indian soldiers had lost their lives during the First World War when they were fighting on behalf of British India. In Egypt and in the Aden region across the Arabian Peninsula and the Sinai Desert, thousands of Indian soldiers, they fought valiantly on behalf of the Allied powers against the Axis powers. So there is a memorial here paying tribute to Indian soldiers, and Prime Minister Modi has paid a visit to highlight the contribution of Indian soldiers during the First World War. He also visited the legendary Al-Hakim Mosque in Cairo. It's a historic mosque, one of the oldest mosques in the world. It was largely neglected, but recently it has been rebuilt and reconstructed, and it's closely connected to the Dawoodi Bohra community, which has a very strong base in India. In Indian states like Gujarat, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, you find the Dawoodi Bohra community, which shares very close links with Prime Minister Modi as well. In fact, PM Modi has very good ties with the Dawoodi Bohra community, and the community forms a strong electoral base as well for the ruling BJP. The Dawoodi Bohras, they have a unique lineage. They are part Hindu and part Yemeni, part Arabi heritage, right? So that is what makes them a very unique community. They have their roots in Egypt. Their ancient lineage traces back to Egypt, and it's the Dawoodi Bohra community which has played a key role in reconstructing the sacred Al-Hakim Mosque. So Prime Minister Modi has paid a visit to the mosque as well and met with the Indian community to further cement the close cultural relations. And Egypt also receives a lot of scholarships and training programs from India under the ITEC program. ITEC stands for Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. It's a soft power initiative run by the Ministry of External Affairs, through which we provide educational scholarships and training programs and capacity building programs to many developing and underdeveloped countries. So Egypt is a big beneficiary of the ITEC program run by the MEA. So with this, I bring my discussion on India-Egypt to an end. I hope you've understood all the key points. If there is a mains question, you should be able to write a solid answer covering all these aspects. Clear? Now let's move on to the next article and look at this column from page number 8 that refers to the Tamil diaspora. The article is focused on the Tamil diaspora specifically because recently the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, M.K. Stalin, he paid a visit to Singapore and Japan, and during these visits his focus was on attracting investments to the state of Tamil Nadu from Singapore and Japan. During these visits, he also interacted with the Indian community, specifically with the Tamil diaspora, which has a very strong presence both in Singapore and also in Japan. So during his speech, he highlighted the contribution of the Tamil diaspora and he promised to protect the Tamil community abroad, as they have made a big contribution towards Tamil Nadu and as well as the development of India. The Tamil diaspora, they played a key role in Indian foreign policy by pushing the economic relations between India and the host countries, by promoting our cultural influence, and by providing India leverage in these foreign countries. So Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin, he thanked the Tamil community in Japan and he made a lot of promises to protect the community, to uphold the Tamil language, which forms a cultural bond between the Tamil diaspora and the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. It's in this context that the writer is talking about the Tamil diaspora, their distribution, their contributions, and the challenges that they are facing. So let's have a quick discussion on this topic. Now, before we look at the article, first I want you to understand the role of Indian diaspora in Indian foreign policy. The Indian community abroad plays a critical role in our foreign policy. When we say Indian diaspora, it refers to NRIs, the non-resident Indians. Basically, they are Indian citizens who are settled in other countries for studying, for work, etc. And also includes people of Indian origin or persons of Indian origin and overseas citizens of India. That is, Indians who have settled from several generations. Their ancestors would have moved abroad, settled over there, and the subsequent generations who still are connected to India culturally, right? They may not be Indian citizens, but culturally they are still linked to India. So collectively, they represent the Indian community abroad. They represent the Indian diaspora abroad. It's not just Indian citizens abroad, even those of Indian lineage, Indian ancestry are also seen as part of the Indian diaspora abroad. So this Indian community, which has a very strong global presence, plays a critical role in our foreign policy because they're acting as cultural ambassadors of our country. They're projecting our soft power influence. They're promoting Indian tradition and culture, Indian civilizational values, including Indian dance forms, Indian food, other practices, traditional practices such as yoga, which includes movies and music and paintings, etc. All these cultural symbols of India are projected abroad by the Indian community. Be it Indian food, Indian traditions in general, the civilizational heritage, the common religious links, or any other cultural traditional practice. When this is promoted by the Indian community abroad, this naturally promotes our soft power influence and it gives India a leverage in that country. The diaspora community could be very successful as well. Indians, wherever they have settled, right? They have played a key role in that society. They have contributed to the development of that country as well. Indians generally, they are not known to create any problems. Rather, they abide by the law, and because since they are well educated, they quickly grow, set up businesses, very successful businesses, or they contribute to the economic growth, skill development of that country. Many enter politics as well, become leaders. Today you have cabinet ministers, head of states who are of Indian origin, right? So Rishi Sunak, Kamala Harris, they are classic examples of that. So there are many more countries where Indians are in key leadership positions, either in politics or even in business and in other sectors. So this gives India a natural influence, a natural leverage when we are negotiating with the other country. They not only influence the foreign opinion, the public opinion in that country, but they could also exert influence on the foreign governments. For example, when India-US nuclear deal was worked out between India and US, the Indian community in US played a critical role in influencing the then George Bush government. The former Manmohan Singh government had leveraged the Indian community in the US to exert a positive influence on the George Bush government, which led to the sealing of the India-US nuclear deal. Currently, Prime Minister Modi also leverages the Indian community abroad, right? You would have seen the high-profile diaspora events that happen where the Prime Minister connects with the Indian diaspora, and this naturally extends into leverage for the Indian government in foreign policy, where we can shape the public opinion in the other country and also influence the foreign governments. Along with that, they send back precious remittances to their families in India. Today, India has become the world's largest recipient of remittances, right? According to last year's data, India got more than $100 billion in remittances, in inward remittances. We overtook China a couple of years ago to become the world's largest recipient of remittances, and currently we are receiving on an average about $100 billion every year. And this is massive. This is critical to bridge our current account deficit. So naturally, the government is very much interested to ensure the safety and well-being of the Indian community. Right? The Indian diaspora could face many challenges. They could be caught in a conflict zone. They could be trapped in a war zone or where civil wars have broken out, like it happened in Sudan or in Ukraine. Or Indians might face a number of issues related to their studies, their employment status, visa and immigration related issues, social security benefits, etc. So solving these issues, providing them consular support to solve the visa immigration related problems, promoting labor standards, protecting their social security, and rescuing Indians if required, if they are caught in a conflict zone. this becomes the top priority of the Indian government as part of our Indian foreign policy. This is the core national interest. So it's only natural to focus on key communities abroad, such as the Tamil community. There are few communities from India which have a very strong global presence and influence, like the Punjabi community, the Sikhs from India having a very strong diaspora community around the world, right? Even from Kerala, people of Kerala have a very strong presence in West Asia and as well as in few other countries. Similarly, the Tamil community has a very strong and worldwide distribution. The major countries they are found in includes Sri Lanka, of course. They are found in overwhelming numbers. If you look at the Indian community in Sri Lanka, majority of them would be of Tamil origin. Then you look at Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia and Singapore. Majority of the Indian community here constitutes of the Tamil diaspora. This in fact is an ancient age-old connection dating all the way back to the days of Cholas and the other South Indian kingdoms and empires which extended their influence into Southeast Asia. So since that era there has been a strong Tamil connection. Even in countries like Myanmar, or formerly known as Burma, there was a strong Tamil community. Even today you find a Tamil community in Myanmar. They had extended influence into other parts of the region as well, all the way till Cambodia and Vietnam. And in many other countries today, including Mauritius, then Australia and New Zealand, Fiji, in the Caribbean as well, like Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, then Suriname, which is in South America, right? And across the Gulf region, in US and Canada and European countries. So across these countries, the Tamil community is very well distributed and they are in very strong and influential positions as well. Is that clear? Many of the Tamils, they had migrated centuries ago as well as part of the historical links offered through Cholas and others. They were well spread out across Southeast Asia and Indian Ocean. Then later under the British, many were transported as part of the indentured labor system, which was a forced, exploitative, bonded labor system practiced by the British to replace African slavery. So Indians were transported as laborers and many Tamil families were transported. That's why you find such a strong Tamil community in Fiji, which is a Pacific island near Australia. Even in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, Tobago, then Guyana and other places, even in Suriname, which is in South America, you have a strong Tamil community because they were all transported by the British as indentured laborers, right? So post-independence as well, many Tamilians have traveled abroad, settled, studied abroad. Today they are contributing to those countries and form a very strong cultural link between India and many countries. There are many popular names that comes to mind because Tamil community has excelled, be it in politics, in science, in art, in business, in literature. There are many popular names and I'm sure you know many of them. Dr. Chandrasekhar, Nobel laureate physicist. Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google. Raghuram Rajan. Muthaiya Muralidharan, the popular cricketer. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the US. Right? They all have a Tamil heritage. So these are just few examples that the writer is quoting to highlight the contribution and the distribution of the Tamil community around the world. Now he points out to certain challenges being faced by the community, specifically in Sri Lanka and in Myanmar. He points to the historical discrimination and oppression the community has faced as they have been rendered stateless due to the oppressive discriminatory policies of the majority community in these countries. Unfortunately, in both the Buddhist majority countries, radical Buddhists have been known to target the minorities. In Sri Lanka, the Sinhala Buddhist majority, they primarily started targeting Indian Tamils who were settled in the central highlands of Sri Lanka, where you have tea plantations. These were the Tamil communities transported more recently by the British in 1800s, 1900s. The Sinhala Buddhists never accepted Indian Tamils as their own. But Sri Lankan Tamils who are found in northern and eastern provinces, right, they had very much blended with the Sri Lankan society because they had migrated centuries ago. It was a natural migration which had happened. So Tamils found in northern and eastern Sri Lanka are part of the Sri Lankan Tamil community. So while Sri Lankan Tamils were given citizenship after independence, Indian Tamils who were essentially laborers in the tea plantations of central islands of Sri Lanka, they were denied citizenship. In 1948, the then Ceylon government, which was dominated by the Sinhala Buddhist majority, brought out a discriminatory citizenship act through which Sri Lankan Tamils were given citizenship, whereas Indian Tamils were recognized as illegal migrants. They were rendered stateless, and Sri Lanka said they are India's responsibility. Initially, Prime Minister Nehru rejected the stand. Prime Minister Nehru took a principled stand that the community should be conferred with citizenship, as they have equal rights, as they have settled in Sri Lanka for at least a good 150 to 200 years. But the divide between the Tamil community and the Sinhala Buddhist majority would only escalate, which further led to the civil war as well, that completely destabilized the country. So Indian Tamils still today are refugees. They are stateless as well. Many of them are in India. Eventually India took joint responsibility. So the writer talks about this painful history faced by the Tamil community in Sri Lanka. Similarly, in Myanmar, the Burmese government, which was targeting all minorities, including Rohingya Muslims, would target the Indian Tamil community as well. They were rendered stateless by the Burmese government, and they were expelled from the country. They were thrown out of the country, and they even faced targeted persecution. So again, it was radical Buddhists of the country who were behind it, right? So there was clearly a ethno-communal dimension in what happened in Burma and in Ceylon. The impact of this is felt even today, and that's what the writer is talking about. Initially, India tried a balancing act because our ties with both countries were very important. Our ties with Sri Lanka, ties with Myanmar were very, very important. So in the interest of maintaining friendly diplomatic relations, India agreed for compromises. In the Sirimao-Shastri Pact of 1964, signed between Sirimao Bandaranaike and Lal Bahadur Shastri, India took joint responsibility of the Indian Tamils from Sri Lanka. We took joint responsibility of the community, and they were divided between the two countries. And the writer criticizes this. He says that the Tamil community was treated like merchandise, like a good, like a product, and they were divided between the two countries. This policy was rejected by many Tamil leaders from the Madras province, from the Madras presidency. Many top leaders, they opposed the deal, but in the interest of building good ties with Sri Lanka, Lal Bahadur Shastri went ahead with this agreement where we took joint responsibility of Indian Tamils. So many Indian Tamils were took into India as refugees, and even today they remain stateless as their citizenship has not been solved. So M.K. Stalin, when he was addressing the diaspora in Singapore and Japan, he has referred to some of these instances. He has also pointed out the neglect of Tamil language and Tamil culture in the foreign countries. The younger generation in general have given up the importance of the Tamil language and the culture associated with it. And also in those countries, the governments also have not given equal respect and treatment for Tamil as a language and as a cultural identity. So this is where the writer is calling upon center-state collaboration to not just protect the Indian community and solve some of the legacy issues, the historical issues, but also protect the Tamil language and the culture going forward. See, in foreign policy, protecting the diaspora is clearly the mandate of the center. It's a union subject. Foreign policy itself is a union subject. States have no role to play in it. But given that India is a federal state, the writer says that despite the exclusive jurisdiction of the center in foreign policy, state governments can also influence public opinion. Right? Especially states like Tamil Nadu. The same applies for Punjab as well. Where there is a strong linguistic cultural connect with the diaspora, the state governments can play a role in influencing the government policy and the public opinion. The writer even suggests that under the Citizenship Amendment Act, which currently is limited to those facing religious persecution in Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh, he says that the act can be extended to cover any minority community that has faced persecution, to include the Tamils in Sri Lanka and Myanmar as well. He's suggesting that India should provide citizenship to Indian Tamils who were thrown out of Sri Lanka. Right? These are some radical suggestions he's providing to protect the Tamil community and the diaspora, given the contribution they have made to Indian foreign policy. He's asking the Indian government to work with the state government to protect Tamil language and culture abroad, and work with foreign countries and the diaspora community to protect the cultural identity. So that's why I feel it's a very interesting, very important article, and you can expect a mains question or even an essay topic based on this. Now moving on, we have a small article on page number 3 and 13 that refers to the Uniform Civil Code, which has been making a lot of news of late, and the conflict it creates with other communities in India, various communities in India. See, I'm sure you know that the Law Commission the Law Commission of India has recently recommended, that the government should begin a consultation on bringing a uniform civil code, which would be in line with Article 44 of the Indian Constitution. India's constitution makers, they envisioned India as a equal, egalitarian society where every citizen would have equal rights, where everyone would be governed by common laws, irrespective of their religious practices, tradition and culture. But of course, such a uniform code, sometimes referred to as a common law, the so-called common law, is more applicable for developed, mature societies. That's why it is seen as an egalitarian objective. It's not an immediate objective which has to be realized. It's a directive principle, right, which is not justiciable, of course, but it's a long-term goal, a long-term vision laid down for the state to create an egalitarian society where all communities, irrespective of their religion, their cultural, traditional practices, will follow a common law. This applies for all civil matters like marriage, divorce, succession, inheritance, adoption and guardianship. All these civil personal matters are governed currently through various common laws and religious laws as well. You have Hindu Marriage Act, the Muslim personal law guided by the Sharia, right? There are many other communities, right, which have separate legal measures, and it allows them to follow their separate religious codes and religious practices as part of the common code. So India, despite being a democratic state where equality is guaranteed as a fundamental right, it is argued that by allowing for different religious laws to take precedence, right, we are not creating a right ground for a common law to be brought in, such as a uniform civil code. It's a very controversial, debatable topic. As I said, in a diverse country like India, where you have multiple religions, multiple tribes as well, it's not easy to think of such a common law, as it could compromise the basic rights of many other communities as well. But as a long-term vision, in the spirit of pursuing an egalitarian society, yes, a country should have a uniform common law, a uniform civil code governing these personal and civil matters. Right? So it's a very debatable topic. So in this context, since the Law Commission has given a fresh push to the UCC debate, calling for opinion from all stakeholders, there has been a lot of concern expressed by various communities, especially some minority communities. There are two articles in today's newspaper that refers to this. We have an article on page 3 and page 13. These concerns are coming from tribal groups from central India, particularly from Jharkhand, and few tribal groups from northeast India, specifically from Nagaland and Meghalaya. Now, why is this important? It is extremely important because these areas are protected areas under the Indian Constitution. If you look at some of the tribal belts of central India, be it Jharkhand, parts of Chhattisgarh, Odisha, then Madhya Pradesh, etc., where you have indigenous tribal communities, these are 5th schedule areas. Because of the significant tribal population, the regions have some of the districts here are declared as scheduled areas by the president. The president notifies them as 5th schedule areas, providing for some special protection and special development packages to these tribal areas. Similarly, in the northeast region, we have the 6th schedule that grants autonomy and provides for autonomous district councils to govern few tribal districts in Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. It applies to these specific states. So 10 autonomous councils have been created in the 10 tribal regions of Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. So they have a unique protection. There is autonomy given to them to protect their cultural identity, to protect their tradition, their religious practices. Now these communities are worried. The tribal communities in Jharkhand, they have collectively opposed a uniform civil code because imposing a uniform common law on them could erode their religious practices and traditional practices. If you look at Meghalaya in particular, you have tribal communities such as the Garo, Kasi, Jaintia. You would have heard about the Garo, Kasi, Jaintia hills. All the three are autonomous regions in Meghalaya. They have distinct and separate autonomous district councils for the Garo region, Kasi region and the Jaintia region. all these communities in the northeast of India, they are matrilineal, they are matriarchal societies. In a patriarchal Indian society where there's male domination across Indian society, there are few tribes and few communities which are matriarchal even today, right? When in terms of succession, in terms of marriage, inheritance, etc., they follow a matrilineal structure, not a patrilineal structure. If you look at the Kasis and Garos and Jaintyas, the youngest daughter will become the inheritor of the family property. This never happens in other Indian communities, right? Which is male dominated, which is patriarchal. Even the surname which is given to the child is derived from the matrilineal side, from the mother's side, right? This is again very distinct to some of the tribal communities here, and they are worried that imposing a uniform law on them will erode and destroy their traditional practices, even their religious practices, which is integral to their cultural identity. That is the concern they are expressing. If you look at Nagaland as well, it's a Christian majority state, right? Nagas have largely adopted Christianity. So they are also concerned that imposition of a uniform civil code could erode their religious practices, could erode their traditions, culture, which is tied to their cultural identity. Is that clear? So this represents the other viewpoint as to why UCC is not suited for India, at least right now. At least as of now, the time is not right for implementing a uniform civil code. That is one side of the argument. But there are others who argue that it's high time for India to bring out a common law, to have a uniform civil code, to replace the religious codes and other laws which are there and tribal customs, so that everyone has a equal right and a equal practice which is followed in the country that creates a more egalitarian society, right? So both the arguments, they have to be acknowledged and understood irrespective of what stand you take, right? So moving on, we have another important article on page 20. It's a science special page. I just want to give you a highlight of this article. If not going into the depth of the article, I just want you to highlight a certain point being made in this article. See, recently we studied about heat waves in UP and Bihar. Just a few days back, I had covered heat waves in UP and Bihar in detail, and it explained how many lives have been lost in Uttar Pradesh. While making this discussion, we linked the heat wave conditions which I have started aggravating of late. We have linked it with global warming and climate change. We pointed out one of the reasons why we are witnessing more brutal heat wave conditions is because of ongoing climate change and global warming. This argument was supported by many scholars and scientific institutions as well. There's a US non-profit institution, very popular, very reputed institution called Climate Central. This American institution has brought out an index called the Climate Shift Index, or CSI, to measure the impact of climate change around the world. So according to the Climate Shift Index of Climate Central, the latest heat waves in UP that consumed 100 lives was a direct result of global warming. It drew a direct correlation between the two events. But the writer of the column is disputing this. He raises a counter argument. He is saying that what is the confidence of this scientific claim which is being made, and what are the consequences of linking every weather related event, every incident which happens with climate change and global warming? Because when these reports are published for the common man, for the common public, we may not get the context, we may not get the entire scientific context in which the argument is being made, right? So this could create a very biased approach. It could build an uninformed opinion that every event, every disaster is a result of climate change and global warming. This will ignore other local factors, weather related factors and local human decisions which would have contributed to the vulnerability. In every disaster occurs because there is a hazard, a dangerous potential event, which is combining with vulnerability of the region, which eventually turns it into a disaster. In that vulnerability component, the human decisions which are made, the culture of the society, the economic activities of the people in the region, they all play a role in influencing the impact of a disaster. So we can't simply make a blanket statement or an assumption that a disaster is happening only because of climate change and global warming. Climate change, global warming are global climatic events, whereas individual weather related events such as a heat wave in UP And if you directly attribute the two by making a link and connection between them, there could be a problem. The writer says, we don't have enough scientific evidence to show that every single disaster happening today is a direct result of climate change and global warming. Heat waves would occur even without climate change and global warming. These are individual weather-related phenomena. And the impact is getting magnified because of some local factors as well. In Uttar Pradesh, for example, given the economic backwardness of the region, people are more forced to work in the open. You have more migrant workers, daily wage workers and construction workers who are getting exposed. So that vulnerability could be playing a factor. Now, if you're blindly linking everything with climate change and global warming without the right attribution and detection, it might give rise to wrong assumptions. It might take away our focus from the actual priorities, and it will push the government and the institutions to focus more on long-term climate change. Yes, tackling climate change is a necessity, no doubt. It will drive such extreme events, 100% correct. But making a direct correlation between every weather-related event and a global level climate change could be wrong, because you don't have enough scientific evidence to back that. You can't clearly pinpoint that the current heat wave in UP was directly because of climate change, or no other reason was responsible for that. So by making such assumptions, you are ignoring the other factors which might have played a role. The other socio-economic factors, the other weather-related, local weather-related factors. This will divert away your attention and precious resources, and it could in turn affect our disaster management. That is the warning the writer is striking. When such reports are published, right, the right context has to be given. The attribution has to be made with enough scientific evidence. Without that, if assumptions are made and these links and correlations are created, in general, the public, the governments could get misled. Focus more on long-term climate action instead of focusing on some of the immediate local factors as well, which could be contributing to the impact of the disaster. Got it? So that is what you need to understand from this article. Now let's move on to the prelims section for today. We have around 6 important articles. I'll take you through the articles quickly. There are some important points you need to note down for your prelims. On page number 1, there's an article referring to the current crisis in Manipur. As you know, ethnic violence and clashes have broken out between the Meiteis and the Kukis, and the state government has been blamed for its inaction, for its ineffectiveness and incompetence in stabilizing the state and in dealing with the crisis. In fact, there are very strong accusations, very serious accusations that the current government and the Chief Minister Biren Singh has been ineffective and seen to be acting in a biased manner to favor one community over the other. These are very serious and strong allegations which have come up. That at the state level, the ruling party seem to be favoring one community against the other, and the Chief Minister himself has appeared to be a little biased towards one community against the other. This required the intervention of the Union Home Minister. Amit Shah has summoned Biren Singh and has urged the Chief Minister to remain unbiased, to deal strictly with the security crisis without favoring any community. It's unfortunate that this has to be told to a Chief Minister. This is something that should be a part of governance, right? But irrespective of that, there is one important point in this article which refers to a group, a social group called Meira Paibis. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has urged Chief Minister Biren Singh to engage with a social community, a women-led group called Meira Paibis. So you should know about this social group and why is this community popular. Meira Paibis is a women-led social organization that traces its origin to the 1970s when Manipur was witnessing peak insurgency led by the Meiteis, Nagas and Kukis, which had completely destabilized the state. So when insurgency was at its peak in Manipur in 60s and 70s, ASPA had been extended. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act had been extended to give special powers to the Indian Army and the Assam Rifles, which were engaging in counter-insurgency operations. But apparently, under the extraordinary powers of AFSPA, several rogue officers have allegedly misused the powers to commit fake killings, even rapes, molestations, etc., triggering massive protests from women, especially in Manipur. You might have heard about popular women activists such as Irom Sharmila, from Manipur who led a decade-old hunger strike against the Indian forces, calling for revocation of AFSPA. On similar lines, there is a women-led social group, a social movement in Manipur called Meira Paibis. It essentially translates to women torch bearers, because these women, they found patrol units. They would march on the streets of Manipur during night times, holding a torch in their hand to ensure the safety of the region and prevent any human rights violations against especially women. That is how the group became popular, right? And that's how the name Meira Paibis was given, as it translates to women torch bearers. Currently, this group is again in news because they have been disrupting some of the operations of the Indian Army and Assam Rifles in the latest clashes. Recently, few Methi militants were detained by the Indian Army under the AFSPA special powers. But Meira Paibis protesters, they blocked the Indian Army convoy and forced the Indian Army to abandon these operations. So there has been a disruption to ongoing security operations by a group known as Meira Paibis, right? Meira Paibis claims to fight for human rights, as they allege that under AFSPA, a lot of human rights violations have happened. But their activities has definitely had an impact on security operations on the ground. Hence, the Home Minister has asked the Chief Minister to engage with the women's group, to talk to them, to negotiate with them, to ensure that they don't disrupt ongoing security operations. He has also urged the Chief Minister to remain neutral and unbiased and ensure that the ethnic violence is contained as soon as possible. Right? Next, on page number 4, we have an article referring to the frequent floods and droughts in Bihar. There's an important point here with regard to geography that you can take away from this article. The article is referring to the vulnerability of Bihar to be affected by frequent floods and droughts. Especially the northern districts of Bihar, such as Madhubani, Kishanganj, Sitamarhi and others, even Champaran, which are closer to the Nepal border, which are part of the Terai belt, they are the most flood affected regions. I'm sure you would have heard about rivers such as the Kosi river, which you see here in the map. Kosi is referred to as the sorrow of Bihar because every monsoon it floods, causing massive damage in Bihar. Similarly, the Gandak river, all of which are tributaries of the Ganga, right? These are rivers flowing down from Nepal. These are transnational rivers flowing down from the Himalayas in Nepal, crossing the Terai belt into India. So these rivers flowing down from Nepal, they are known to cause massive floods in northern Bihar. The blame is on how the river waters is managed in Nepal. So people in Bihar, the administration also demands the construction of dams, high storage dams, which can hold the water back and the water can be released more efficiently to contain and prevent these floods. This management of waters of the Ganga and the tributaries also causes droughts during the dry period, especially in southern Bihar. This has been a concern for farmers towards the southern banks of the Ganga, where they are not getting enough water supply during the summer season. These problems could be better handled and solved through building of better dams and by collaborating with Nepal in this regard. So that is a demand that the people of Bihar have expressed, and there is an app which has been brought out by the government of Bihar called Befikr. The Befikr is a grievance app where the citizens can register their grievances, complaints, including complaints related to the flood and drought situation in the state. That's what the article is focusing upon. But understanding the flow of these major rivers and how they affect Bihar is something that you should know about, right? Especially the rivers flowing down from Nepal like Kosi, then Gandak, even the Kamala river, Bagmati, Adwara river. They're all known to cause massive flooding in the northern districts towards Madhubani, Kishanganj and other districts. So please make a note of that. Next, we have an important article on page 10 and also on page 12 referring to the Reaper drones, the MQ-9B Reaper drones that India is procuring from the United States. We did have a discussion on this yesterday as well, but we focused mainly on the deal and the impact of the deal on the India-US relations. Now today, let's just focus on the capabilities of this drone. Let's quickly discuss the features and the unique capabilities of the MQ-9B Reaper drone, which is designed and developed by General Atomics. which is a US aerospace defense manufacturer. So the Indian government has struck a deal with US government and General Atomics to procure 31 Reaper drones. In 2020, we had procured 2 of these drones on lease for the Indian Navy. And after deploying the drones in the Indian Ocean for surveillance and for intelligence gathering, now we are planning to procure 31 of these drones for the Navy, for the Indian Air Force, and as well as for the Indian Army. The sea-based version of the drone is called the Sea Guardian. Please make a note. The maritime version of the drone, which is specially built for long-range maritime operations, it's called the Sea Guardian, whereas the land-based version of the drone is called the Sky Guardian. So Sea Guardian drones will be for the Indian Navy. 15 of them would be assigned for the Indian Navy for intelligence gathering and maritime operations in the Indo-Pacific. 8 drones each, the Sky Guardian drones, will be assigned to the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. These are high altitude, long endurance drones. They can be deployed at very high altitudes, about 30,000 feet, thereby avoiding detection as well. They can endure in a long range flight without refueling. And they are remotely operated, as you know. And they even have beyond horizon control capabilities. That is even beyond visual range, right? Even if the drone crosses the horizon and visually it's not seen anymore, it can still be easily remotely piloted because of the satellite link through which it operates. Is that clear? It is piloted remotely through a satellite link, an encrypted satellite link, thereby providing it long endurance. It can be deployed for long missions lasting even up to 40 hours. It can even loiter in a particular space collecting vital information on enemy movement, on any infiltration attempts, and can also help in guiding precision operations like surgical strikes and precision strikes. And the best part about the Reaper drones is that it's not just used for surveillance and intelligence gathering. It's also equipped with armed missiles, the Hellfire missiles. It can be used for precision strikes. But as of now, it's still not very clear whether India is procuring the armed version of the drone. Definitely, they will help in intelligence gathering and surveillance. They even have anti-surface, anti-submarine warfare capabilities. It will reduce the cost of operations as well. Now imagine, across the wide stretch of Indian and Pacific Ocean, if we had to deploy regular aircraft, manned aircraft like P-8I Poseidon, which is also procured from the US, the cost involved is very, very high. You will also push the aircraft to its limits by operating it for long hours. It will result in wear and tear of the precious aircraft, and the humans who are flying the aircraft, right, even they come under a lot of stress and strain. So instead of deploying manned aircraft for every mission, first the unmanned drones can be deployed. Then after narrowing down the focus area, then a manned aircraft can be sent, which minimizes the cost, reduces the time, and as well as the strain on the soldiers. So it serves a very, very significant purpose for the Indian forces, especially in maritime surveillance and reconnaissance. So these are the unique features of the Reaper drone. There are 2 versions of it. We are procuring both, the sea-based and the land-based version, the Sea Guardian and the Sky Guardian. Next, on page 12, we have an article referring to China's activities in POK, especially China's ongoing construction projects as part of the CPEC corridor, which is part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and the deployment of Chinese weapons in POK. See, India is principally opposed to the Belt and Road Initiative. We have boycotted the Belt and Road Initiative because of our opposition to the CPEC project. Our main problem is the alignment of the CPEC corridor. If you look at this map, this ambitious Chinese project is connecting the Xinjiang province from Kashgar to Gwadar and Karachi, the major ports along the Arabian Sea. Thus, China will get direct access to the Indian Ocean without depending on Malacca Strait. So via Pakistan, China can directly trade with West Asian countries and even take oil supplies via the Persian Gulf through these strategic ports and directly into China. But the problem for India is that this alignment is passing through POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. This is Indian territory occupied illegally by Pakistan. And through this territory, China is building its oil pipelines, road and rail projects and power plants. And part of the territory here has been leased by Pakistan to China, that is the Shaksgam Valley. The strategic Shaksgam Valley, which is part of Indian claimed territory in POK, has been gifted away by Pakistan to China. So since CPEC corridor passes through these Indian territories, that is why we oppose the project and we have boycotted the Belt and Road Initiative. But the closeness between China and Pakistan is growing. China has been making more investments, and along with that, we are seeing the deployment of Chinese weapons in POK closer to the line of control. Particularly, India's worry is about SH-15, which is an advanced Chinese artillery gun. It's a truck-mounted 155mm artillery gun. It's a howitzer, and many such advanced artillery weapons have been found near the line of control, which is seen as a threat for India. Pakistan is modernizing its armed forces, procuring these latest artillery weapons, and China is behind this. Chinese weapons are being placed near the LOC, and this is a concern for India. Because the SH-15 is a very modern artillery gun, which is known for its shoot and scoot capabilities. The soldiers can drag them through trucks, they are truck mounted, place them near the border areas, launch the mortars and the rockets and flee from the region. Right? So this unique capability is what gives Pakistan an edge, and India is worried about the deployment of Chinese weapons near the LOC. So that's what you should note from this article. Next, we have an article related to the Chandrayaan-3 mission. Chandrayaan-3 is an upcoming ambitious mission of ISRO. It is all slated to be launched. It's all set to be launched in July. In just a few weeks, by mid-July, Chandrayaan-3 mission is expected to be launched by ISRO on board the heaviest rocket of India. Heaviest and the most powerful rocket, the LVM-3, which was previously known as GSLV Mark III. This is the rocket which comes with a cryogenic stage, with a cryogenic engine as part of the last third stage. Recently, GSLV Mark III has been renamed as LVM-3. So this heavy lift and the most powerful rocket of ISRO will be taking Chandrayaan-3 on the third lunar mission of India. As you know, Chandrayaan-1 was a very big success, launched back in 2008-2009. Chandrayaan-1 deployed only a lunar orbiter. It carried out a lot of analysis of the lunar surface, took high-resolution pictures, and even dropped an impact probe. Right? A moon impact probe was crashed into lunar surface to prepare for future missions. So Chandrayaan-1 was a very big success. But Chandrayaan-2, launched in 2019, ended in failure. This was a very ambitious mission where ISRO was planning to deploy a lander and a rover on the lunar surface. The lander was named as Vikram after Vikram Sarabhai, the father of India's space program. The rover was named as Pragya. So lander rover, known as Vikram and Pragya, they were supposed to make a soft landing on the lunar surface. And after Vikram deployed as the lander, making a soft approach, the rover Pragya should have been deployed to conduct scientific analysis. But unfortunately, the soft landing did not go as planned. The Vikram lander crashed, the payloads were destroyed, thereby the mission ended in failure. Now, Chandrayaan-3 is a repeat of this mission. The same lander rover has been rebuilt with additional safety features, correcting all the previous errors and mistakes. And the third mission also has the same mission objective. Is that clear? The final payload will be placed in a lunar orbit and Vikram lander will attempt a soft landing approach. Once it makes a soft landing, Pragya rover will be deployed with various scientific payloads on board. And both Vikram and Pragya will conduct scientific experiments on the lunar surface. They will use X-ray based instruments, laser based instruments, and other electromagnetic spectrum based instruments to analyze the lunar surface for presence of water, minerals, etc., which could potentially help in further manned missions to the lunar surface. Alright, so that's what you should know about the Chandrayaan mission. The last article related to radio telescopes and their importance. It's from Science and Technology, the last article for today. Please make a note as to how radio telescopes function. Radio telescopes are playing a critical role in improving our understanding of the universe. Right? They help us capture very high resolution pictures of faraway galaxies and planets and black holes, etc. So you should know the basics of how a radio telescope actually functions and why it is necessary for astronomical observations. Radio telescopes, they primarily capture the radio waves, the minute low strength radio waves which are emitted by celestial bodies. These are long wavelength radiation. They have a very long wavelength. So across space, these radio waves are traveling, and that is what a radio telescope tries to capture. And it tries to see through the radio waves. But since these are very faint signals, very weak and they lack strength, these are very long wavelength waves, you need large antennas. You need very large antennas, as you can see in the image. Alright, so the radio waves are captured by the antenna, it's bounced off to amplify the strength. That's why they have a conical shape, a parabolic shape, right? And the diameter increases depending on the radio spectrum that you're trying to capture. So weaker the radio signals you're trying to capture, you need a much bigger diameter of the radio telescope, and the parabolic shape will help in concentrating the radio waves to the focal point over here. That's where a receiver will be present. Right? The parabolic shape helps in reflecting and amplifying the radio waves to the focal point over here at the center, which is captured by the receiver and further analyzed through computer-based systems. It's this analysis which helps us clearly understand various celestial objects, and it furthers our understanding of astrophysics. So currently, one of the world's biggest radio telescope is in China. In China, you have a 500-meter dish. Imagine the diameter is half a kilometer. It's called the FAST instrument. It's one of the largest radio telescopes in China. Even in India, we have many major radio telescopes, especially in Ladakh, right? The Indian Institute of Astrophysics, in collaboration with other institutions, has set up radio telescopes to carry out such observations. So just understanding the basics of how a radio telescope works could help you in a prelims question. So I urge you to go through some of the key points given here, which I have explained, and please make a note of this, as you can expect a science question in your prelims. So this completes my discussion for today. We have covered 10 important and big articles. So please take up the mains questions for your practice, write your answers and post them in the answer writing portal, for which the link has been given in the description box. Also head to our Telegram channel. We'll have a quiz on some of these topics. You can revise them again by taking up these practice questions. I hope you guys really liked the session. Do let me know how it went in your comments. Share the video with other aspirants, press that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So that's it from my side. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.